disproportionately affected because of this intersection of gender, poverty, and political engagement. And so, this is something that the global research community really needs to focus on. It's making sure that, we're not looking at hunger without taking the gender component into consideration. If you're going to have successful implementation, then it needs to be really, really targeted. And so if you're interested in learning more about this, there's a study that it's still in a preprint survey, SSRN, but you can see for each of the SDG areas, this has been mapped and tracked, and I think it's really good food for thought, and we're looking forward to doing more in this area. And then really wanted to just highlight that the three kind of main steers we got from our partners were to take a much more interdisciplinary, holistic approach. That's also the gender point. If you're really going to achieve these, we need to be looking at ways of involving all genders, nationalities, and disciplines to really identify the synergies between the SDGs. The other one is really that closing the gap between science, policy, and society, ensuring that there's greater cooperation and finding ways ourselves to support that cooperation and that dialogue. And then, of course, the need for real leaders to champion the SDGs. And for us, this is what Kumsal Bayazit, our CEO, is doing, really supporting this important work. And I want to note that, the methodology that was developed for this report continues to evolve, and it continues to evolve with university partners. And so we have a team of colleagues that are continuously looking for ways to improve the methodology. So there's much work being done, and I think it has to be done together. It has to be done as a consultation if it's really going to succeed and be useful. So moving along, I wanted to share a bit about Elsevier's Climate Action Program. This is an area that we realized we needed to do more. And I just want to stress that it's not that we haven't been working, for instance, on our net zero for direct emissions at Elsevier for scope 1 and 2. We have that in order, but we wanted to do more. And so this year we signed the climate pledge. And we announced our commitment to becoming net zero by 2040. So this is a decade before the Paris Agreement goal of 2050. And so what we wanted to do was to really work on scope 3 emissions. So that means suppliers, but it also means committing to a clear target to reduce carbon emissions from, for instance, travel. Elsevier colleagues make a huge effort to meet with our customers, our university partners all over the world. And this is really important, but I think we've learned during the pandemic that there are other ways of working as well, hybrid ways, and we can all put our heads together to really reduce carbon emissions. And so we've committed to flying less, 50% less. This is internally, externally, to meet customers such as yourselves, but by 50% before 2025. So it's ambitious, and it means conscious travel choices. And we've also gone ahead to establish a new employee network group, Sustain, because you're not going to really achieve these things if you don't have the commitment and the interest from colleagues. And so the idea is to grow that sustainability mindset, like we have grown an inclusion and diversity mindset at Elsevier over these past years. It's really become embedded in the DNA of our culture, thanks to Kumsal. It helps. You've got grassroots, but you also have that top down, and it really helps to evolve the culture. We need to do that also for sustainability. So it's really right there, front and center. So much to do there. And just this past month, we published a new analytics report called Pathways to Net Zero, the Impact of Clean Energy Research. And this has really done a deep dive into net zero, analyzing 1.6 million papers over the last 20 years, which provides us with a snapshot of research and innovation in clean energy and how it supports the drive to a net zero future. So, if you looked at the kind of the more holistic SDG report we published last year, these are the kind of deeper dives that we can take to really get closer to what is actually happening in this field and where are the new exciting successes. And I want to underscore that we wouldn't do any of this without our climate advisory board. So this is a new board that we established this year, and these very distinguished experts are helping us to kind of steer the course, to understand, where we should be focusing, investing, maybe which portfolios of content we should be growing, commitments we should be making with their help. For instance, we've also just launched several new climate partnerships, which I'll tell you about in the foundation. So this is a new area for us, which we're looking forward to growing rapidly in terms of content data and analytics. Moving on, Research for Life, it just turned 20 this year. For those of you who aren't so aware of it, it is a UN publisher partnership, a public-private partnership that has been started with 6 publishers, founding it with 1,500 journals when the print to electronic migration was happening 20 years ago. Elsevier was one of them, early adopters and believers, and now 20 years on, there are more than 200 partners. There are 150,000 peer-reviewed resources which are available to over 100 countries and territories around the world. And we pour really so many of our products in here, and our expertise and our efforts, Science Direct, Scopus, MBase, Mendeley, Clinical Key. So it's really constitutes a quarter of the resources. And that for the last year and this year, I'm the chair of the Executive Council, which is how it is governed, which is a real honor. I've been involved for the last 10 years, but it's very different when you're suddenly working on the strategic plan for the next 5 years to help determine the direction of the partnership. So Research for Life has always focused on access in Southeast Asia. If I think quickly of the countries that are eligible for this free resource, it would be Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. It's a complex organization, but it's focused on access. But at this moment, we're at an inflection point, and we're really looking at how can we, in the evolving open access landscape in which we are operating, Research for Life really needs to play much more of an advocacy role, so that it's not just about access or information literacy training. It's got to be also about making sure that we are supporting researchers in developing countries around the entire research cycle, not just as consumers of research, but also as producers of research. And to ensure things such as that Research for Life, that the content that's available in there is not just from the North, but has the rich and deeply relevant research from the Global South that is useful to our users. So our model will be shifting, and I share this white paper here, Achieving an Equitable Transition to Open Access for Researchers in Lower and Middle Income Countries. This is a white paper that we did last year together with STM, the Publishers Association for Scientific Technical Medical Publishers. And we did it as part of our Research for Life contribution. And basically what it tells us is that 75% of researchers from low and middle income countries are still publishing in subscription journals. And it does a qualitative and a quantitative survey, and it demonstrates that there's just not a lot of, we need to raise awareness that there are APC waivers, that the threshold is, that publishers have worked together to lower the access thresholds for publishing open access journals. So one of the outcomes of this white paper has been for Research for Life to create a page where all publishers that are participating have clear links to their APC waivers. So for instance, Elsevier provides 100% waivers to countries that are in the Group A or free category, and 50% waivers to Group B authors, which are more the emerging countries, which pay a nominal fee for access. Just to give you a sense, and many publishers do this as well. So these are some of the findings we had where, we need to be clear about APC waivers so that researchers in developing countries don't have to search for this, but they understand that they have these resources at their hands. Another one is inclusive research, making sure, I talked about this earlier, making sure that we're reaching out and getting the expertise from developing countries and emerging countries on our boards as reviewers, as conference speakers. And you see a whole list here, but it's really, there's much we can do, and it's always very helpful to have that evidence base, and it's something we're striving for in everything we do that's sustainability related, is making sure we have an evidence base from which to work. So moving on, I want to share a bit about the foundation. We've been going for 15 years, and our focus is really inclusive health and research. And I'll share a bit more what I mean by that in a moment. Historically, really, we focused on advancing women in science and global health, researchers in developing countries. More recently, we were really going earlier in the pipeline, in the sense that we were looking at underserved youth, so kids from under-resourced backgrounds, and helping them with STEM education. And so we have a whole variety of projects, but we are guided by the UN SDGs. We're funded by Elsevier. So just received a new resources to launch an early career researcher programs, which we're very excited about. And it's been very, very constant. It doesn't really matter what the economic circumstances. Elsevier has, for 15 years, just very, very solid commitment. And again, just to highlight that whatever partnership that I set up, I'm always looking for ways to tie it back to Elsevier, because then I can pull in the expertise, the colleagues, who can help with, who can bring in their editors, who can, we can maybe profile awards at a conference that's around sustainability that Elsevier runs. Maybe we need help with media. So then we have communications colleagues that can reach out to journalists and help tell the stories. There's so many different ways, or, the analytics. Again, I also have had recently a data scientist within Elsevier who's been working with AMREF, which is a global, doctors and nurses in Africa, helping them evolve how they use their technology. So that's an in-kind support. Now we move to these terms, inclusive health and inclusive research, because there was so much overlap between our different program areas. And really that's what it comes down to. It comes down to inclusion of talent from all over the world, tackling health disparities. And so I think this is probably the most accurate, the clearest way to represent what we do. And at any one time, we have between 15 and 20 partnerships and a very small team. So I have a program manager and a coordinator, and with the three of us, we're really developing these partnerships. And again, we often reach out to, if we have a colleague who's based in Japan and we want to evolve a new partnership in Japan, then we sit down with that colleague and we plan and we reach out and we build the partnership together, because that way it will be much more robust and meaningful. And our Elsevier colleague in Japan will also bring in all kinds of synergies we won't be aware of or have thought of. So it's a very integrated way of working. One of our flagship programs is the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World awards that we do with them. And this focuses on early career women scientists. We've been doing it for 10 years. We're coming up on our, about to announce our next 5 winners. So that will be 50 in total, 50 from all around the world. And so we've had, and why is this important? It's because we are helping to generate a new, highly visible group of leaders. They're early career researchers, but they're incredibly talented. And what we do is create opportunities. So role models, but also when they receive awards, many of our winners have been invited back to meet their country's presidents. They've had new programs set up. They've gotten research fellowships. This award has attracted other awards, sometimes the L'Oreal award. So it's a kind of very, very virtuous, very positive set of opportunities that opens up. And this was just before the pandemic, a few weeks actually, before everything locked down. And we were celebrating our most recent group of winners. And I wanted to just tease out for you some of our amazing Asian women scientists who hail from Bangladesh and Nepal and Sri Lanka and Mongolia. And this is over the last couple of years. But just to give you an idea of the kind of things they work on, if you take Dr. Tabassum Mumtaz from Bangladesh in the far left corner, she's standing at the lectern, and her work is on disintegrating plastic waste and making biodegradable plastics from bacteria. And you see all of our winners here, except for the bottom two who are not photographed at the conference. They take place at the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. We invite them there. They receive $5,000, but it's really that week of just meeting all of these senior researchers and policymakers and all these door openers, and just they get to present their research. They do an immense amount of networking. If we're in Washington, D.C., we take them to meet their embassies, which opens lots of doors back home. So it's really an amazing, the highlight, I think, of my year, usually, if it's not a pandemic. And I wanted to mention that this coming year, we've shifted our focus from a discipline-specific focus. We would rotate physical sciences, biomedical sciences, and so forth, to much more of an SDG theme focus. So this February, we will be announcing our new climate action scholars. And so, of course, we also drew upon our climate action board members to help be the jury, to help select these top talents. So I'm really excited to hear some of these projects, but I just wanted to give you a taste of what you're seeing here. You're also seeing, if you just go across the middle one at the top, Dr. Tista Prasad Joshi from Nepal. And what she's doing is removing arsenic from Nepal's water supply. Then, for instance, if you take Dr. Champika Elawala Kanganamge from Sri Lanka, she is on the top on the right, and her work, so she comes from Sri Lanka. Her work is controlling invasive aquatic plants in river ecosystems. So it's really about restoring the natural resistance of native plants to invasive species. So all of these projects have very strong ties to the SDGs. And this is something we see. It's not something we required for these last years, but it's just what we see is that so many women scientists are just deeply committed, really deeply committed to improving the world around them. And there's such power there. I will stop there. There's many more, and I can, if you're interested, I can tell you all about these amazing women. It's all on the Elsevier Foundation website. But I wanted to also share with you a challenge that we have. So for the last 5 years, we've run the Green and Sustainable Chemistry Challenge. We've had all kinds of chemistry solutions to really tackle dire, SDG challenges in developing countries. And this past year, we evolved it into chemistry for climate action to get even more targeted solutions. And so the winners each receive, we have 2 winners for this chemistry for climate action. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was awarding them virtually, unfortunately, but they each get $25,000 to really pursue their project. And it's really been an incredible journey. We've learned a huge amount. And again, many, many winners from across Asia. I mean, just looking at, if you take in the center at the top, you see Professor Susanna Yusuf from Malaysia. And she basically developed natural products to develop a water-based biopesticide, and was testing these on paddy plants because so many farmers were getting poisoned by fertilizers, by pesticides. And this was a green solution. And what she said was this award gave internal recognition and the opportunity to enhance her research to support the UN SDGs. It captured public attention because that's one of the things we can do. We can do lots of outreach around this and help raise the profile of the scientist so that they can do more and receive more opportunities, more support internally. But so she was able to raise awareness also amongst the farmers on the importance of the application of green and sustainable methods for improving paddy yields. And maybe to highlight one other, yes, Dr. Pham Hong and Dr. Dinh Van Quang from Vietnam in the far bottom corner on the right are this year's winners. So Dr. Pham Hong has her face mask on, hard at work in the lab, and they won a prize which basically seeks to use some of those 38 million tons of rice husk, which is waste, and it's burned as agricultural residue. So it's a huge source of unhealthy particles in the air. And so what they have done is to develop techniques to transform these rice husks into biodegradable plastics and to use those for air and wastewater filters. So for instance, even to be used in a kind of face mask that has air filters made by bioplastic, converting renewable carbon resources into a unmissable product. So I think you see here some very tangible examples of social impact that's coming from impressive research. And I wanted to also share with you some new projects we have in Asia. One of them is Ask Marlo. Basically, this is a global part of our global health focus, and it's looking to provide a kind of digital stepped care for youth in Indonesia. And the idea is to really provide reproductive health information, but also HIV/AIDS health information to reduce the rate of infections and unhealthy behaviors. And the idea is also with this kind of youth-friendly stepped care system that young people are able to find the help they need eventually with clinics. But this is a whole information system which can get them what they need, whether it's digitally or in person. So we're really excited to support them. We're not getting huge amounts, 50,000 is seed money. And that is a lot of what the Elsevier Foundation can do because we're not Bill and Melinda Gates. We can provide proof of concept funding. So for instance, we recently heard that after 6 years of supporting Doctors Without Borders, their research center in Niger in Africa, they have now, because we were supporting the capacity building of their staff, they've now gotten a huge grant from the African Academy of Sciences. And we can evolve our partnership with them in different ways, maybe focus on women scientists in West Africa, because they don't need our help in that way anymore, because they used our seed grant to really show how important this work was that they were doing and to get major funding. So I mentioned we were launching a new early career researcher program. And this is really because the leaky pipeline problem within academia has not been solved. We had a 10-year-long program at the Elsevier Foundation, where we gave, I think, a total of 50 grants, 2.5 million to do things like level the academic playing field. So professional visibility grants so that childcare, to promote professional visibility, high-level working groups, all kinds of things. We did that for 10 years, and then we wanted to explore different ways of collaborating with universities and I&D. But the problem hasn't gone away, and it's only been exacerbated by the pandemic. And you could say there's been a real she-cession. There have been all kinds of studies that have been done that have shown, that women's participation in the workforce has really fallen greatly during the pandemic because of the disproportionate burden of care at home, just trying to pick up the slack with everything being closed. And it's really adversely impacted women scientists' ability to publish. I think I need to wrap up. I see that time is moving quickly, and I know that we want to hear from our other wonderful speakers. So just to mention, we're looking forward to launching. We've just received the okay to push ahead with this, but a series of women science workshops in 3 conferences in China. So we'll use the Elsevier conference system as a jumping off point. We'll work with our Chinese I&D board member who's very knowledgeable about how we can really make an impact, and we'll be looking for ways to offer leadership skills, academic writing, whatever is helpful, maybe negotiating skills. We'll be really localizing it and targeting it to the context there. So we'll be doing that in the coming year at 3 Elsevier conferences, but also supporting a whole seminar workshop series in Singapore, which will be run by the Asian scientist. Juliana Chan, who runs the Asian Scientist, has been a rising star in science, trained at MIT, and is building this workshop off of that model So we'll really be looking at how to effectively communicate your science in a way to get more grants, media coverage, defining your brand. Again, very localized to the Singapore context. So I think I will leave it there. I'd like you to be aware that we have many resources. So you can see a QR code. You can just check out so many of our newsletters, sign up for that. We can keep you abreast. And of course, follow us on social media. And I just want to thank Johan and Sarab and our colleagues for allowing me to share this work with you, because it is a way that Elsevier is able to give back, to make a difference in society, and to collaborate with universities and partners and researchers such as yourselves. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Ilan, for sharing such wonderful work, stories. I know there are like hundreds of stories that's going to inspire us. And thank you so much for all the work that you and the team also already